The series begins with a character who wakes up to the sound of his ringing phone. As he gains consciousness, he discovers he was sleeping with his friend's sister. After getting ready, he heads out to meet his friends. Meanwhile, his twin sister sends him a distraught and tearful message saying she has caused a big problem. We learn that he is very wealthy and attends the most prestigious school in the country. While playing with his friends, his sister arrives in a state of distress. Fearing the worst, he inquires about what happened. She tells him that a girl saw her with her teacher, with whom she has a relationship. His sister worries about being exposed by the girl, named Ruby. The story then flashes back 4 hours. Ruby is on her way to school, riding the bus. She sees a pregnant woman standing and offers her seat. Ruby is a poor girl whose dream is to attend Oxford University, which drove her to do everything possible to earn a scholarship to attend the wealthy-only school. Because of this, she avoids socializing to keep out of trouble and safeguard her dream. At school, Ruby meets her friend Lynn, who was very wealthy until her family went bankrupt. During philosophy class with Mr. Sutton, the philosophy teacher, they discuss Descartes. Lydia answers incorrectly, and Ruby corrects her, which annoys Lydia as Mr. Sutton is impressed with Ruby's intelligence. After class, Ruby forgets to take a letter of recommendation from Mr. Sutton. She leaves Lynn and rushes back to his office, only to find him kissing Lydia. Shocked, Ruby drops all her papers. And while Mr. Sutton tries to explain, Ruby refuses to listen and leaves the office as Lydia breaks down and informs her brother. He arrives at the school, attends a student meeting, and is surprised to see him there. He pulls Ruby aside to talk, offering her a large sum of money to forget what she saw in Mr. Sutton's office. Ruby scorns him, calling him the vilest person she's ever met, and returns the money. Despite James telling her she needs the money, at least to buy a new bag to replace her torn one, Ruby refuses and throws the money on the ground before walking away. Later, Ruby goes to work. She studies and works simultaneously to help her paralyzed father and buy him a new wheelchair to replace the broken one. She is happy when she receives her pay. On her way home, she meets her sister Amber, and they return home together. They prepare dinner with their father and enjoy a great evening. Ruby feels sad at bedtime when she sees her father sleeping on the ground floor because his wheelchair is broken and he cannot get to his room upstairs. Ruby saves the money she earned to complete the amount needed to buy a wheelchair for her father. The next day, she goes to school and confronts her teacher, requesting her letter of recommendation back. He tells her that he has already written it. Everything in it is true. Ruby tells him she doesn't care about his personal life, but if his affair is exposed, her letter will be worthless. She takes her papers and decides to find someone else to write the letter. She resolves to have the school principal write her recommendation instead. However, she tells no one about what she saw, not even her friend Lynn. Ruby is shocked when she encounters him again, and he asks her what she wants from his family, offering her to name her price. She refuses to take any more money from him. She is stunned when he starts undressing, thinking she wants to be involved with him romantically. She threatens to kill him if he comes any closer, then leaves him to quickly attend the game where the principal will be present. We learn that he is the school's sports team captain and is very skilled, often leading his team to victory. However, his friend Alistair ruins the game by hitting an opponent, resulting in his expulsion by the coach. At that moment, Alistair stands by Ruby and talks to her, which annoys him when he sees them together, and he collapses. Afterward, Ruby quickly approaches the principal and talks to him, asking him to write her recommendation letter. The principal tells her he hasn't seen any significant activities from her for the past 2 years. Ruby asserts she is the head of the events committee. The principal agrees, but on the condition that she manages the welcome party, a crucial event as new students will be joining the school. He promises to write the letter if it indeed turns out that she is an excellent team leader. Ruby is thrilled. However, her happiness doesn't last long because he confronts her and mocks her poverty. He tells her he's not afraid of her, because she could never really approach people like him. Devastated, Ruby remains upset all the way home. Meanwhile, he and his sister return home and spend time with their family. At the same time, Ruby works hard to prepare for the welcome party, which she manages to organize successfully, impressing the principal, who tells her it's exactly what he wanted. But before he can finish his praise, strange music starts playing. Strippers appear, ruining the party. Turns out he was behind it. Ruby confronts him furiously. He tells her that no one will believe her now, even if she speaks about his sister. At this moment, the principal calls them into his office and learns that he was responsible for spoiling the party. Therefore, the principal bans him from the club and punishes Ruby by telling her he will not write her recommendation letter. He asks her if there's something between her and James, who is very worried that Ruby might expose his sister. However, he is surprised when she remains silent and refuses to speak. Ruby pleads with the principal for another chance to organize the fundraising event, promising that what happened will not repeat. The principal agrees and decides to make James join her team to atone for his actions, telling them they need to fix their mistake. Both are shocked and continue to argue in front of the principal, who eventually expels them from his office. At that moment, Ruby challenges him, declaring that she will organize the event. He won't be able to prevent her from getting into the university she desires. Accepting the challenge, James decides to fight back. We flash back to James as a child playing chess with his father. His father tricks him into thinking he's going to lose, then wins, teaching him that the powerful dictate what happens next. His father then snatches the last piece of candy and eats it, and they laugh and continue playing together. Returning to the present, James, now grown up, follows all his father's teachings. Meanwhile, Ruby is at school talking to her team about preparing for the fundraising event. She's relieved that James is not at the meeting, telling her team that it's better the further he is from them. Elsewhere, James is training with his team, but is shocked when the coach informs him that he can't play for the rest of the year. James angrily reminds the coach that his father funds the school, but the coach reveals that the decision came from his father personally. James is even more shocked and collapses. Lydia tries to calm him down and suggests he talk to their father. James vows to return to the club and make Ruby regret the day she joined the school. His sister asks him to leave Ruby alone because she kept their secret, but James refuses to let Ruby win. He decides to attend the meeting and completely changes the theme of the party, suggesting it be Victorian themed. Ruby is irritated when the team likes James's idea, and due to majority agreement, she has to accept it. Ruby worries because she doesn't know how to design the party's Victorian-themed poster, which must feature someone in a Victorian dress. Lynn suggests that Ruby talk to James since his family's company is one of the oldest brands in England. Reluctantly, Ruby asks James to convince his father to lend them a collection of clothes. James refuses to help her, confident that she, as an adept team leader, will manage on her own, and leaves. Ruby feels defeated, can't find a solution until she suddenly gets an idea and asks her sister, who has a knack for fashion, to make the dress. Initially, her sister Amber refuses, but agrees eventually. The next day, James competes against his father in running, and his father is pleased when he wins. James asks his father to let him rejoin the team, but his father tells him they are busy preparing for a new investor's arrival. His father is concerned about the sport James plays and refuses to let him rejoin the club despite James pleading with him, which leaves James feeling very sad and powerless. Meanwhile, Ruby and her sister Amber work together to finish the dress in record time. Ruby is delighted with it and asks Amber to iron it because she is tired and wants to sleep after working long hours. At this time, James is at a company meeting presenting the new collection. Lydia is also at the meeting, visibly sad as she echoes her brother's words because she wrote the speech. It is revealed that the new collection is Lydia's creation, as she is passionate about fashion and talented in it, but her father is exploiting this to prepare James to take over the company despite his lack of interest in it. After the meeting, James sees photos of the dress Ruby sent in the group chat. He is annoyed to learn that she managed to handle the situation and decides to irritate her by mocking the sewing machine used to make the dress. Due to the messages he sends, Ruby forgets the dress, which gets burned by the iron. She shows the ruined dress to her sister, devastated, but Amber comforts her and they end up laughing. However, Ruby remains sad and unsure how to handle the situation. The next day at school, the new teacher Pippa, who is preparing them for Oxford, arrives and questions their rationality and behavior. This question leads to a heated argument between James and Ruby because he insults her poverty, saying no one will care about her if she doesn't have money. Ruby responds fiercely, telling him he knows nothing but money since he was born and that he surely sees anything else as unimportant. She asks him if he wants to spend his entire life thinking only about money, which he did not earn or create himself. She tells him that his family name, inheritance, and even his petty pranks all show that he is empty inside, and therefore only those greedy for his money will care about him. James is shocked by her words and unable to respond, leaving the conversation. Ruby feels guilty because her words embarrassed him. After school, Lydia meets Sutton, who tells her they need to break up. Lydia is surprised and tries to convince him, saying they can be together once she graduates. But Sutton knows well that her family would not approve of him. He tells her he doesn't want her to lose the company because of him, especially since she is talented and developed the new collection. He assures her that her father won't abandon her because he is a smart businessman and won't let her talent go to waste. Still, Lydia is saddened by their inevitable separation and leaves. At that time, Ruby is at home trying to find a solution for the dress, and she also feels upset about James. Although she finds it difficult to apologize, her father encourages her to do so. The next day, she meets James at school and tells him that her actions were unacceptable, especially since she did not understand what he was going through. James is surprised when she apologizes and asks her about the dress. Ruby informs him that it burned. There probably won't be be a poster for the event. During this time, James is touched by her gesture and begins to develop feelings for her. He keeps thinking about her until he returns home and starts to draw her. His father interrupts him, asking him to get ready because they are going out together. Lydia asks to join them, but her father refuses. James is pleased, thinking his father wants to spend time with him, but in reality, his father is using him to get closer to Eileen, a businessman's very wealthy daughter, with plans for James to marry her as the businessman intends to invest in their company. Meanwhile, James remembers Ruby and decides to help her. He sends her a message to get ready because she will be traveling with him to London to photograph the dress. Ruby is surprised to see James's driver waiting for her downstairs, can hardly believe it. She gets ready and searches for clothes to wear. When she goes downstairs, she finds her mother talking with James's driver, who reassures her about when they will return. Ruby convinces her mother that she is traveling to London for the event project. Her mother agrees and asks her to take care of herself. Ruby then gets into the car with James and thanks him for taking her. James tells her it's nothing, that they are just going to photograph the dress and return. Ruby asks him if they make the British King's suits, and James jokes with her that it's true and she might meet him, so she should bow respectfully. Ruby laughs when she realizes he is joking. She then asks him about the rumors that he eats caviar for breakfast and bathes in champagne. James tells her that's not true because he doesn't like caviar. He says there are no rumors about her, to which Ruby responds that she intends to be invisible. James asks her to tell him something that nobody knows about her. Ruby tells him that no one in her family has ever attended university, and she couldn't believe it when she received a scholarship to attend the school, and then immediately set her dream to attend Oxford. James is delighted to see her enthusiasm. During this time, Ruby sees his notebook and is surprised to find out that he draws very well. They then arrive at his company, and Ruby is amazed by the dresses there. James asks her to try on a dress she liked. She agrees, but on the condition that he also wears a suit. James agrees and is amazed when he sees her in the dress. They take photos together, and Ruby is happy to see herself in the mirror. At that moment, James moves closer to her, just as his parents arrive. Ruby greets his father and introduces herself. However, Mortimer treats her poorly and belittles her, saying the dress she's wearing only suits a queen, and mocks James in front of her for being late to the meeting. Ruby feels insulted, especially since James does not stand up for her and does not respond to his father. Ruby changes her clothes and leaves, refusing to ride back with James's driver, insisting she will take the train instead. Ruby returns home and locks herself in her room all day. The next day, her family tries to find out what happened, but Ruby refuses to talk. Later, at school, she is shocked to see her photo with James that all the students are looking at. Ruby breaks down because she is suddenly noticed by everyone after being invisible before. She confronts James when she learns he was the one who posted the photo. He tells her she looked very beautiful in it. Ruby tells him she does everything possible to avoid being noticed, but now he has made everyone aware of her presence. James is saddened when Ruby tells him everything between them will return to how it was before. Ruby then goes into the bathroom, devastated. Lynn tries to console her, but Ruby hurts her by saying she wouldn't have known her if she were still wealthy. Later during class, Pippa asks Ruby to stand up and talk about her reasons for wanting to enter Oxford. Ruby stands up, but remembering James, she is unable to gather her thoughts and quickly leaves the room. When she returns home, she finds her father alone, crying because he spilled food on the floor and couldn't pick it up. He tells her he was making a cake for his wedding anniversary. Ruby helps him and they embrace, both crying. At that time, James comes to her and tries to defend his actions. He tells her that what happened was because of his father and that he was ashamed of himself, which is why he posted the photo. He saw her as very special and wanted everyone to know her. Ruby is moved when James says he does not want things to go back to how they were before and invites her to a friend's party to go with him. Ruby refuses, saying she does not fit into his world, but deep down she is pleased, especially when James brings her the dress she tried on as a gift and asks her to wear it to the party. Meanwhile, James is with his father, who tells him to stay away from Ruby because she is not of their class. He says girls like her cannot adapt to their lifestyle, which they have lived all their lives to maintain. James then asks his father how he managed to reach that level. It turns out that James's father was not originally wealthy, but became so through his very wealthy wife. Mortimer gets angry and reminds James that he worked hard and made significant efforts to stabilize the company and preserve the family name. James points out that Lydia is more talented and capable than he is and suggests that she should run the company. His father rejects the idea, saying his sister is too weak and would not be able to handle the challenges. At school, Lynn overhears some girls mocking Ruby. She defends her, warning them that anyone can lose their money at any time. Afterwards, Ruby enters the lab and apologizes to Lynn, who forgives her immediately. Ruby is surprised to learn that James has invited her to a friend's party, and Lynn encourages her to go. Taking her advice, Ruby decides to attend, and James is pleasantly surprised to see her there. At the same time, Lydia, who is drunk, becomes upset when she realizes that James invited Ruby and threatens to ruin Ruby if she breaks her brother's heart. After Lydia leaves, James is delighted when Ruby decides to put the past behind them. They dance together and have a great time, but Eileen, seeing them happy together, spills juice on Ruby out of jealousy. Eileen's actions escalate when James's friend jokingly throws Ruby into the swimming pool, causing James to panic when he sees her struggling in the water. He quickly dives in to rescue her. Everyone around is shocked to see her visibly shaken and distressed. James tries to comfort her and drives her home. In the car, Ruby shares a traumatic childhood incident about nearly drowning in the sea, which resulted in her father becoming disabled after a boat hit him while he was trying to save her. Ruby cries, blaming herself for the accident, and James consoles her until she falls asleep in his arms. When Ruby wakes up, she moves to kiss James, but suddenly sees all their friends filming and laughing at her. She wakes from the nightmare, shaken. Afterwards, she sends a message to James thanking him for his kindness, while at the same time he is thinking about his feelings for her. He's pleased to see her message, and they continue talking all the way until Ruby arrives at school, where James is waiting for her. As they enter together, all the students stare at them, making Ruby nervous, but James reassures her and asks her to mimic his confidence. Meanwhile, James sees his sports team practicing, and Ruby notices his sadness. Lydia, who receives a message from Eileen asking if her brother is really dating Ruby, is soon joined by Mortimer, who asks her to have breakfast with him. He praises her intelligence and acknowledges that the new clothing line would not exist without her. However, Lydia quickly realizes that her father is using her to write a speech that James will deliver to the press, and he asks her to stay focused on him and keep her eyes on him. When Lydia goes to school, she talks to James, who reassures her that everything is under control. Lydia warns him that their father will act in his own way if he discovers anything, to which James tells her not to worry and reminds her that Ruby is not like Sutton. Later, James helps Ruby with the party preparations and is surprised to learn that her birthday will be on the same day. He promises to be at the party on time and be the first to dance with her. At that time, Ruby finds out that someone from the team bought birds without slaughtering them, resulting in an excess amount. She asks them to move the boxes to places with air circulation. Meanwhile, Lydia is upset when she sees Sutton talking with Pippa and asks him if he is involved with her and whether it is easy for him. Sutton reminds her that it was their plan, yet he is not happy because he lost the love of his life. He fears someone might see them, and Lydia suggests they run away together, but he refuses, saying he can't do that. James is seen practicing the speech he will deliver to the press and is shocked to learn that the press meeting is scheduled at the same time as the party. His father forces him to choose between his fleeting love, which he will forget in 2 years, and his family. Meanwhile, Ruby is at home celebrating her birthday with her family, very happy with the gifts, especially James's gift of a new bag with the drawing he made for her. James has breakfast with his sister and admits she was right, as he thought he could control his life, but it hasn't worked out and he feels unjustly treated. Lydia tells him he doesn't know what injustice is, as their father only talks to her to manipulate her and currently wants her image on the project she worked on for years. Her boyfriend now loves another woman, and she tells James that he doesn't know what it means to be a substitute for someone. She asks him to just do what is required of him. James is sad, but tries to joke with her. At that moment, Ruby sends him a message informing him that all the birds at the university have flown away. He quickly goes to help and manages to get them back into their cages. Lydia thanks him for his gift. She is upset when she learns he won't attend the party. He tells her he doesn't want to go to the press conference or even enter Oxford, and that he is doing everything against his will. Ruby asks him what he really wants to do and urges him to think about it. James is moved by her words, but their conversation is interrupted by another student. Ruby uses the opportunity to speak with the principal, asking him to reinstate James on the team if the party is a success, since he worked hard and struggled with her on it. Ruby is very pleased when the principal agrees, and James encourages her to take the recommendation letter. On the way to the conference, James keeps repeating the speech to ensure he doesn't forget it, but still he stumbles, and Lydia corrects his mistakes. James is surprised and says she knows it well, to which Lydia reveals that she was the one who wrote it. They both come up with an idea simultaneously. James suggests they let their competitor think he's a step ahead and secure the win. James then implements a strategy he learned from his father when he was young and asks the driver to change the route. Meanwhile, Ruby is getting ready, and her family is impressed when they see her in the dress. Ruby then goes to the party, feeling very anxious, but Lynn reassures her that everything is perfect and the party is ideal. Ruby relaxes and tries to enjoy herself, and is surprised to see James at the party. It turns out he let Lydia go to the conference to present her project, and he attended the party to be with Ruby. Mortimer is shocked to see Lydia standing in front of him, asserting that she is in the right place, just as her brother is. At that time, James is seen dancing with Ruby, which makes her happy. She tells him that she spoke with the principal about getting him back on the team. As they are about to kiss, the electricity cuts out. Ruby is initially frightened, but James manages to restore the power and reassures her. Ruby tells him that she enjoyed working with him. James responds, feeling as if she is saying goodbye. Suddenly, his father appears and stands before him. James and Ruby are shocked, and Ruby is terrified when Mortimer criticizes her for allowing distractions and losing control of the event, though Ruby quickly realizes that Mortimer is lying and there were no issues. James sees Lydia standing devastated, and their father forces both siblings to return home. Ruby successfully obtains a recommendation letter from the principal after the party is a success, and he informs her that the original letter has been sent to the university. Lynn is very pleased. Back to Mortimer, who scolds his children. Lydia is angered when he belittles her and asserts that she knows everything about the production line. Her father retorts that this doesn't change the fact that she spoils everything she's involved in, and that since she was young, she wanted to be at the top, but doesn't understand that it requires commitment. Lydia counters that the press conference wouldn't have existed without her. Mortimer then turns to James, mocking him for being lovesick and saying everyone was depending on him. James remains silent and refuses to respond. Meanwhile, Ruby sits with Sutton and thanks him for being the one who believed in her the most at the university. Sutton is surprised when she tells him that he is her role model because he got into Oxford despite coming from a small village. She promises him that she won't give up and will achieve her dream. Back to James, his father provokes him to speak, but James still doesn't respond and walks away. James is shocked when he discovers that his father knows everything about Ruby and her family. His father continues to insult her in front of him until James, unable to bear it, asks him to stop. Suddenly, his father strikes him, but the driver intervenes to defend James and pulls Mortimer away. Mortimer then threatens to destroy Ruby if James doesn't stay away from her, saying he will prevent her from entering university and will drive her family out. The next day, Ruby sends a message to James, but he doesn't reply. She worries about him because he hasn't contacted her since he returned home with his father. In her haste to leave the house, Ruby forgets to hide the box where she saves money. Her mother is surprised when she finds it. Meanwhile, James goes back to school and starts interacting with his friends again. Alistair asks him if he's okay, to which James responds that he's in the worst shape. Sutton tries to talk to Lydia after seeing her at the party. He asks about what happened, but she doesn't want to discuss it. Nonetheless, Sutton doesn't leave her alone and suggests they run away together, saying she could continue her education while he works somewhere else. Lydia is surprised and tries to understand why he changed his mind. Sutton tells her he loves her, and Lydia is moved and agrees. Meanwhile, Ruby sees James at school, but is shocked when he walks past her and ignores her. She feels embarrassed as everyone at school watches them. Overwhelmed and unable to focus, she leaves the classroom and goes to the sports field to confront James. She asks him if his plan was to make her fall in love with him so she would speak to the principal and get him back on the team. She notices the bruise on his face and asks if his father did that. James, intending to hurt her, tells her that no refined man like him would care about a poor and lowly girl like her, and that it's time everything went back to normal. Ruby breaks down and cries all the way home. After work, she returns home and is surprised to find her family has discovered her savings box. She was saving up to buy a wheelchair for her father, who tells her he doesn't need her money. Ruby gets angry and tells them they are a family and should help each other. Her father insists he won't let her exhaust herself working while studying. Ruby is saddened when she says that this is the only thing she can do to make it up to him. She retreats to her room and cries. Her sister follows her and comforts her, hugging her. Meanwhile, James is at a party, drinking until he gets drunk. He returns home inebriated and collapses on the floor. His mother helps him to his room. James asks her if she ever wished to be someone else and if she was unhappy. She tells him she was once in an unhappy love relationship and that everyone reaches a point in life where they understand themselves and stop chasing things that don't suit them. James is upset because his mother is placing responsibilities on him that he doesn't want. She tells him that he doesn't realize how lucky he is to have the opportunity to study at one of the world's most prestigious universities and eventually manage one of the largest companies, a position anyone would desire. James responds that he wishes he had the chance to discover what he really wants and reassures her that he can't deviate from the path they've set for him because he lacks the freedom to choose. Meanwhile, Lydia is shocked when she discovers she is pregnant and runs to her mother for comfort. The next day, she and James leave for university exams. At the same time, Ruby also travels for her exams and meets Jude, who is responsible for the new students. He offers to help her, but she declines and walks away. away. She enters the university excitedly, only to be shocked when she finds James standing in front of her, with his room right across from hers. The next day, Ruby wakes up excited and prepares for her exams. She quickly leaves before James comes out of his room and walks around the university, feeling close to achieving her dream. Then she meets Jude, who introduces himself. At that time, Lynn arrives and greets Ruby. Lydia asks her brother if he is ready for the exams. He confidently replies that they will just enter and be accepted immediately. Back to Jude, who explains to the students what to expect in the interview, advising them not to be nervous as it's not difficult. However, Ruby is anxious and keeps reviewing her knowledge. She becomes even more nervous when she sees James entering the waiting room. Shortly after, Jude calls Ruby to start her interview, and just then, James wishes her good luck, which flusters Ruby even more. She quickly leaves him behind. After the interview, where she answers all questions impressively, making a good impression on the professors, Ruby leaves the interview room happy, recounting everything to Lynn. James, meanwhile, is also in his interview, impressing the professors with his answers, but he feels bothered when they compare him to his father, as it reinforces his feeling that he's not doing anything for himself, but only for his father. Jude stops them and suggests they take a break, leading them to the university bar. James is surprised and somewhat jealous when he sees Ruby entering with Jude. Meanwhile, Lydia is with her brother, but feels sad and leaves due to feeling unwell. Ruby, uncomfortable because of James's presence, also leaves the bar. Outside, Lydia overhears Ruby's conversation and asks if she's stressed because of the interview. Lydia tells Ruby that the interview doesn't matter because she won't be going to the university anyway. Ruby is surprised, telling Lydia that she is very smart and excels academically. Lydia reveals that she is pregnant and loves the child because she has never loved anyone as much as Sutton, which is why she wants to keep the baby. Ruby supports her, mentioning that the university has programs for mothers and that she has seen Lydia's perseverance at school, assuring her that no one else could continue as she can. Lydia tells her that she now understands why her brother can't forget Ruby. Ruby is shocked to discover that James still loves her, despite being the one who left her. When she returns to her room, she can't sleep because of all the thoughts swirling in her head. She hears James returning to his room, trying to knock on her door, but he hesitates at the last moment. Ruby stays awake until morning. Ruby worries she will fail the second interview because it requires great concentration. Alistair sits with James after his interview and tells him that he failed because he wasn't focused due to the effects of drinking. They then enter the waiting room, and James sees Ruby and wants to sit next to her, but he withdraws because Jude beats him to it and sits next to her. Later, Jude asks the students if they want to ask anything about the university. James deliberately embarrasses Jude by asking about his grades, saying he wants to know if he is truly qualified to train them on university life. Ruby interrupts, telling James that there are applicants with genuine questions and asks him to listen to them instead of wasting their time with unnecessary remarks. Ruby surprises James when she confronts him, saying he is afraid of becoming like his father and questioning why he is even with them if he doesn't want to study at this university. She accuses him of making everyone feel inferior and pushing them away to prevent them from discovering that he's just a coward who would rather play games than stand up for his dreams. Ruby wakes up and feels embarrassed, leaving the place quickly. James runs after her and tells her she is right. He has been lying and hiding his feelings, but he won't let her judge him wrongly because he has been acting this way for her sake. Ruby gets upset and demands that he talk to her clearly because he is driving her crazy. James yells back, telling her she doesn't understand how much he suffers seeing and hearing her every day. Ruby gets even angrier and tells him he doesn't know what he wants. James follows her, approaches her, and kisses her. They then go to her room, but Ruby remembers his previous neglect and hurtful words. James confesses to her that he acted that way because of his father, who saw that he had changed because of her, therefore threatened to ruin her life to make him stay away from her. Ruby asks why he didn't tell her this before. James tells her that he didn't want his father to hurt her. Ruby responds that she is not afraid of him. James breaks down, telling her she doesn't know what his father is capable of. Ruby doesn't care and asks him not to hide anything from her anymore. Then she tells him she will make a list to help him figure out what he wants and asks him to tell her the things he loves. James tells her he loves drawing, Asian food, sports, music, and most of all, he loves her. After spending time together and feeling very happy, the time for the final interview arrives. Ruby is ready and prepared for it. At that moment, we see James leaving the hall and walking away, deciding not to enter the university. Meanwhile, Lydia calls her mother and leaves a message saying she has good news. Will tell her when she arrives home. Then, James takes Ruby to the bus station and bids her farewell. Ruby is surprised when she returns home and finds that her family has bought the wheelchair for her father, who manages to go up to his room for the first time since the accident. Ruby is very happy about this. We then move to James and his sister returning home, where they are shocked to learn from their father about the death of their mother, who died of a stroke. Their father explains that he didn't tell them earlier because he wanted them to complete the university interviews, which were very important to their mother. Mortimer appears sad but doesn't let his grief affect his work, focusing instead on maintaining the company's stocks. James becomes furious and confronts his father but is restrained by the guards and pulled away from him. James is angry with his father for not informing him about his mother's death. He leaves the house and goes to Ruby's place. He sees her sitting with her family, who are celebrating her success. They're all very happy. Therefore, he chooses not to enter, walks away. Suddenly, Ruby senses his presence, but when she looks, she can't find him.